Hello. In this video, I want to continue on the subject of the Charlottesville car attack. In my prior video, which I will link below in the description box, I provided several reasons for why I believe that that event was staged. One of those reasons was that the leaders of this so-called neo-Nazi movement, this white nationalist alt-right movement, leaders like Richard Spencer, Mike Enoch, Jason Kessler, many of them appear to have ties to the deep state. Mike Enoch's mother is a big money donor to Hillary Clinton. Jason Kessler was, as recently as a year ago, a member of the Occupy movement and an Obama supporter, and now all of a sudden he's giving Sig Heils and waving around the Nazi flag and screaming gas to Jews. And Richard Spencer, he has been given prominent media coverage by the mainstream media, by organizations like the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and Politico and The Atlantic. He's been given very prominent coverage in a way that increases his public profile far beyond what it would naturally be. And then they've used his public profile to discredit President Trump's own statements, and that is textbook deep state behavior. You raise the profile of somebody who's an infiltrator, who is an agent of yours that is operating undercover within a movement. You raise their profile, and then when an incident occurs, you use that person to discredit who you want to discredit. That's textbook, and that's what they're doing with Richard Spencer. So there's a lot of information that indicates, and I go through in my prior video, that indicates that this event was staged by provocateurs who are presenting themselves as neo-Nazi, alt-right, white nationalists, but who are really probably operating, many of them, on behalf of the deep state and are trying to discredit the right, trying to discredit President Trump's supporters, trying to make things difficult in this country, trying to incite a race hysteria, which they are successfully doing. And it is important for those of us who understand what's going on, who understand that this event was likely staged by the government, to point out the evidence that points in that direction, just to pull the curtain back, to pull the veil back from this whole charade, to allow people to understand what's really going on, what the government is really doing. And in this video, I want to provide a new piece of evidence to those of you who are following this story that I don't believe has been seriously examined by anybody in this field of Charlottesville research on the internet. And that is the live stream video taken by Ford Fisher on August the 12th. I believe this video is a bombshell. I think this is the Zapruder film of the Charlottesville incident. Now, the Zapruder film, if you remember, Kennedy assassination, it shows President Kennedy's head being blown off and moving backwards into the left, which, to any fair-minded person, seems to indicate that he was shot from the front, that the bullet came at him from the front, and that pushed his head to the back, the direction it moved. And to a lot of people, that film disproves the lone gunman theory, disproves the Lee Harvey Oswald assassination theory, because Oswald was behind the president when he was shot. I think the Ford Fisher video arguably disproves the official story here, which is that this attack was the work of a lone nut driving a car and that nobody else was involved. And the reason why, there are several reasons why the Ford Fisher video seems to disprove that. The Ford Fisher video seems to indicate that one of the other cars involved in the attack, namely the maroon van, and if you recall, there were 3 cars involved. There were 2 that were stopped at the intersection on 4th Street and Water, and then there was the Dodge Challenger that hit the 2 cars. The maroon van was the first car in line. And the Ford Fisher video shows that the maroon van was in position at the intersection of 4th Street and Water 5 minutes before the incident took place, and that it did not move. Now you tell me. And the Ford Fisher video also shows that the intersection, at the time that Ford Fisher passes it, the intersection is clear. There are not very many people in it, so that the van could move. The van could go forward. The van could turn left if it wanted to. The van wasn't trapped there. The van could have gone somewhere, but it didn't. So for some reason, one of the other cars involved in the incident was in position 5 minutes before the car accident takes place, and we don't know why. The other thing the Ford Fisher video shows is it shows that Ford Fisher likely knew something was going to happen before it happened. And I'll explain all of this as I go through his video. But I think his video is very, very important. It's a very, very important piece of evidence, and it has to be seriously examined, and up to this point it has not. So let me explain to you who Ford Fischer is. I'll start with that. Then I'll go through his video. And I'm going to go through his video, and I'm going to explain what he's seeing at the precise moment that he sees it in his video. So you can go to the time-stamped part of his video, and I'll provide the link to his YouTube, the YouTube account with this video below, and you can go to the precise minute and second portion of the video to see what I'm telling you. You can hear the accident in the video, so you can take the time of the accident and you can demarcate, because it's a live stream video. It was not edited, so you can take the time of the accident in his video, and you can determine how far before the accident some of these events were, just based on where in the video it was. So the accident takes place at 7 minutes 40 seconds into Ford Fischer's video, for example. Ford Fischer passes the maroon van at 2 minutes 45 seconds. So based on that, you know that what you're seeing in Ford Fischer's video is the maroon van just about 5 minutes before the accident, because he doesn't cut. This is all a live stream that he's providing. So you have a 5 minutes before the accident shot of the maroon van that was involved in the incident. That's very useful information. I don't think that it exists anywhere else. Anyway, let me just, I'll start by describing who Ford Fischer is, and then I will get to his video. So Ford Fischer is a 23-year-old recent graduate of American University. He is involved in a company called News to Share, which is a startup news sharing company. His real name is actually not Ford. His real name is Andrew Fischer. I don't know if Ford Fischer is a pseudonym or whether Ford Fischer is maybe that's his middle name. Maybe he just goes by Ford. But his real name is Andrew Fischer. As I said, he's a recent graduate of American University. And he's been deeply involved in taking photographs on the ground at some of the major events over the last 3 years. He was in Ferguson, Missouri during the riots. He was in Baltimore, Maryland during the riots there. And he was in Charlottesville over the weekend. So he's been taking video on the ground at a lot of these events. There's a News to Share Twitter, and there's a News to Share YouTube, and you can go and search through his video. Prior to Charlottesville, he was following around a lot of these white nationalists for several months. If you go to News to Share's YouTube, he has interviews with Richard Spencer. He has interviews with Mike Enoch, interviews with Jason Kessler, the three that I profiled in my last video. And he also has extensive interviews with Chris Cantwell. Now, Chris Cantwell is a guy that I didn't mention in my last video. I probably should have. He was profiled in the Vice documentary that aired right after the Charlottesville events. He was given prominent media coverage. And Ford Fischer has several interviews with him, both before and after the events in Charlottesville. So he got pretty close to Chris Cantwell and interviewed him several times. Now, Chris Cantwell, to me, comes across as a terrible, terrible actor. Now, I told you in my last video, I think all these guys are plants, all these leaders of this alt-right movement. They're all provocateurs working for the government. Chris Cantwell is particularly obvious to me. I can't believe that anybody would act the way that he acts in a genuine way.
Gives me some pizza. Who drove how long to get here?
12 hours from our car. We've been driving from north of the border, so.
Oh, you came down from Canadistan. If I was doing the radical agenda in Canada, I'd probably be arrested for it, right?
Yeah. Well,
I contacted the local police. I called the Charlottesville Police Department, and I asked them, I said, I have been told that there's a warrant out for my arrest.
Trayvon Martin case happened, you know, Michael Brown and Tamir Rice and all these different things happen. Every single case, it's some little black asshole behaving like a savage, and he gets himself in trouble, shockingly enough.
I want to be peaceful. I want to be law-abiding. Okay, that was the whole entire point of this. And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful. You know?
Of course we're capable. I'm carrying a pistol. I go to the gym all the time. I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence.
And our enemies just will not stop. We've been fucking assaulted. They are threatening us all over the place.
Kel-Tec P3AT, 380 ACP, Glock 19, 9mm, Ruger LC9, also 9mm, and there's a knife. Well, I actually have another AK in that bag over there. You lose track of your fucking guns, huh?
We are trying to make this peaceful. We are trying to be law-abiding, and our enemies will not stop. What options do we have left? If somebody would like to inform me of that, then I will be grateful to you. I really will.
And, you know, he looks like he's probably in his mid-30s. I can't believe that anybody who acts the way that he acts and says the things that he says would have survived to that age without having been, you know, murdered by somebody for pissing them off. Chris Cantwell is a disgusting character. I don't know if that's his real name, but he seems to be acting in a deliberately provocative way, even beyond what anything Richard Spencer or Jason Kessler and Mike Enoch seem to do. Chris Cantwell seems to go far beyond that. And he says some pretty sick things if you watch the Vice documentary, or even if you watch any of Ford Fisher's interviews of him.
So long as we render ourselves defenseless by adhering to the rules of civil discourse in a conflict with people who operate by the rules of warfare and espionage, we will lose 100% of the time. At what point do we begin physically removing Democrats and communists to establish and maintain the libertarian social order necessary for our desired meritocracy?
He's a pretty... He presents himself as a pretty sick person, a pretty disgusting person. But I think that's all an act, and I think it's a pretty bad act. I think his accent is fake. I think his acting is fake. I think he deserves a Razzie. Razzies are awarded every year to the worst actor in the worst movie. I think Chris Cantwell deserves a Razzie for his performance here. But in any event, Ford Fisher, in the months before Charlottesville, was attending events at which these fake neo-Nazi provocateurs were giving speeches, and he gave interviews. These people gave interviews to Ford Fisher. They're on his YouTube page. And then in the aftermath of the events in Charlottesville, he again interviewed Chris Cantwell and others about what happened. So this guy, Ford Fisher, was embedded with this neo-Nazi movement, both before and after the events. And he's close to them. They've given interviews to him. He's worked with them extensively. Now, if you were creating a fake neo-Nazi movement, and the leaders of this movement are trying to provoke a reaction out of the left, you have to publicize that movement. You have to get these people's word out somehow. You have to, you know, provide some media with some sort of interview access in order to get the disgusting word of Chris Cantwell or the racist white nationalist words of Richard Spencer out to the public. But if you're going to do that, you're likely to use a media source that perhaps you control. And these people used Ford Fisher. Ford Fisher was one of their primary resources that they used to get their message out, both before and after the events in Charlottesville. What does that tell me? It tells me that Ford Fisher may in fact be working for a three-letter agency himself. Just the mere fact that he was used as a primary resource, that he was given interviews by Chris Cantwell, by Richard Spencer, by Kessler and Enoch and all these other people. There's a few others that I haven't mentioned. There's a guy named Augustus Invictus who presents himself as a political candidate of the alt-right. These people are all come across as fake actors to me, and they're all giving interviews to Ford Fisher. So that leads me to believe Ford Fisher may indeed be working for a three-letter agency. You know, fronting as a reporter, but really working for some agency providing the word of these neo-Nazi white nationalists to the public, acting as a conduit. So just recognize what his background is and the fact that he may be a reporter in quotes. You know, the fact that he is being utilized by this group of deep state agents to get their word out to the public, indicates that he may also be working undercover. So before I get to Ford Fischer's video, let me provide you with some context. There are very few live streams that exist that follow the protesters, the leftist, Antifa, whatever you want to call them, protesters, before they get to the scene of the accident, which is at 4th Street and Water in Charlottesville. There are very few live streams. I don't know why that is, but there's only one that I've found that seems to show the way in which these protesters made their way to that intersection. And the one that I found is from Ruptly. That live stream shows the protesters making their way from there is a parking lot that is in between Water Street and South Street West. It is right in front of the South Street Brewery, and you can see the South Street Brewery sign in these live streams. And this live stream shows the protesters making their way from that parking lot north on 2nd Street Southwest. They go to Main Street, where they turn east. They go 1 block east on Main Street, and then they turn south on 1st Street. And then presumably from there, the live feed cuts out from there, but I presume that from there they make their way 1 block south on 1st Street, and then they head the 3 blocks east to 4th Street on Water. So it seems like they go north 1 block on 2nd Street Southwest, 1 block east on Main Street, 1 block south on 1st Street, and then 3 blocks east on Water Street. It seems like they're kind of make a zigzag motion there for some reason. I don't know why the protesters went in this way, why they went north and then east and then south and then east again, and then they went north on 4th Street when the accident takes place. But they went apparently in this zigzag motion according to the Ruptly feed. I just want to provide that to you because it provides some context to the very beginning of Ford Fischer's video. Now, Ford Fischer begins his video also right in front of the South Street Brewery parking lot on Water Street. So when he starts his video, he is on Water Street, he is heading east on Water Street, and he is in between 2nd Street Southwest and 1st Street on Water. Now it's important to note, just so you don't get confused, the streets on either side of 1st Street in Charlottesville, they both go up in number. So there's 1st Street in the center, and there's 2nd Street Southwest to the west, and then there's 2nd Street Southeast to the east. So there's 2 2nd Streets. I just want to make sure you're clear in your head which one I'm talking about. Ford starts in between 1st Street South and 2nd Street Southwest. That's where he begins his live stream. And a few seconds into his live stream, as he is crossing the intersection of 1st Street, Ford turns his camera to the north. He's heading east. He turns his camera to the north. And you see he passes a building that is known as the Commerce Building on Water Street. You can see the sign. The camera flashes over that, and then he points his camera to the north on 1st Street, and you see a mass of protesters on 1st Street. That, in my belief, is the same protesters that are being followed by the Ruptly crew in the Ruptly live stream. So you're seeing these protesters. They appear to be marching south on 1st Street. I think this is the same group that was in the Ruptly live stream that cut out right when they were going south on 1st Street. I think Ford Fischer captures the movement of this protest group as it is coming south on 1st Street. But Ford doesn't stick with that group. Ford doesn't follow the protesters. As he explains in his video, he's actually following a group of white nationalists. That's what he says he's doing. He says he's following the white nationalists as they head east on Water, and he leaves behind the protesters. The protesters are coming down on 1st Street, and Ford doesn't film them for very long. He moves on beyond them. He doesn't really explain why he's chosen to follow the white nationalists, but that's what he's doing. So Ford continues east on Water Street. And in between 1st and 2nd Street, 1st and 2nd Street Southeast now, so the other 2nd Street, as he is going east on Water Street, Ford, this is about 45 seconds into his live stream, Ford captures the Dodge Challenger, the car that murdered Heather Heyer. He captures it before the accident. It's just 45 seconds into his live stream, about a full 7 minutes before the accident. He captures the Dodge Challenger. All the windows are tinted out. It's a very spooky looking car. All the windows are tinted out. All the tires are black. All the wheels are black. And he points his camera. He's to the right of the Dodge Challenger. He points his camera at the Dodge Challenger, and he looks at it. He points his camera at it for some reason. You can't see the driver. You can't see anything because all the windows are tinted out. But he gets a good shot of that car. And keep in mind, this is a live stream. So anybody watching Ford's live stream would know at 7 minutes before the accident where that car was. Anybody can be watching this live stream as it's unfolding. They can see that the Dodge Challenger is in between 1st and 2nd Street Southeast on Water Street at that time. And some people have done calculations based on this of where that car likely went. I'll provide you with a map. I didn't make this map, but this is probably where the Dodge Challenger went. It probably continued on from where Ford saw it, in between 1st and 2nd Street Southeast. It continued east for several blocks because many of these streets are closed down in this area. You can't actually get from Water Street to 9th Street. It's an overpass. You can't actually get from one to the other. So the car had to go several blocks east up to 10th Street Northeast, where it could have gone north for the first time up to Market Street. Presumably, if it went directly to the accident site after Ford Fisher filmed it, it would have gone north on 10th Street Southeast for 1 block and then turned west on Market Street and gone back down to 4th Street and then turned south. That's where the accident took place. Ford filmed this car 7 minutes before the accident took place. We don't know where the car went in the intervening period. If it went directly, you would think it might have gotten there earlier than 7 minutes before the accident scene. But we don't know where that car went in the intervening period. 7 minutes seems a little bit long to make that loop. There are red lights. It could have gone on some other route that we aren't familiar with. But 7 minutes seems long to make the quickest route back to the accident scene. But in any event, 45 seconds into his video, Ford Fisher captures the car, and anybody who's watching his live stream would have known where that car was at that moment, 7 minutes before the accident. Ford continues on his path. He keeps going east on Water Street. He's going east on Water. At about 3rd Street, he crosses the street to the north. So he's been going on the south side of Water. He crosses to the north side of Water at 3rd Street. And he approaches 4th Street and Water at about 2 minutes 45 seconds into his live stream. Now, 4th Street and Water is the scene of the accident. That is where Heather Heyer was killed. That is where all the protesters were gathered at the time of the accident. Ford Fisher passes this intersection, 4th Street and Water Street, at 2 minutes 45 seconds into his video. When he passes the intersection, the protesters are not yet there. There are a few people there, but the intersection appears to be clear. It appears to still be passable by cars. There are cars that are going in the opposite direction to Ford that are passing him. There are cars that are driving on the road on Water Street. But at the intersection, pointing south from 4th Street into Water, is the maroon van. And as Ford passes that van at about 2 minutes 45 seconds into his video, as he passes that van, one of the white nationalists that he is claiming to be following starts talking about white genocide, and Ford turns his camera to the north and points it at that white nationalist. And in so doing, he gets a very good shot of the maroon van. The maroon van is sitting there at the intersection. It doesn't appear like there's anybody in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat. It appears like the van is empty. We know from photos taken at the time of the accident that nobody was in the front 2 seats of the van at the time of the accident, but there were people in the back seats for some reason. The front 2 seats were unoccupied. The back seats, there were people in the van who clambered out after the accident occurred. That we don't know who these people are, but they were videotaped clambering out from the back of the van to the front seats. And Ford Fisher's video shows that van is there at the intersection. Its wheels are in the crosswalk, right? Ford passes right in front of it, gets a good shot of it. You can't quite make out the license plate, but he gets a good shot of that van. And that van, based on where it was at the time of the accident, it doesn't appear like that van moved at all. It appears like that van stayed where it was from 2 minutes 45 seconds into Ford Fisher's video until when the accident took place at 7 minutes 40 seconds into Ford Fisher's video. So a period of 5 minutes. So that van, who knows when it got there, but at least as of 5 minutes before the accident, that van was sitting where it was when the accident took place. It didn't move, even though the intersection at the time Ford Fisher passes it is clear. The van could have gone straight. It could have gone left. Perhaps it could have even gone right. We don't know. But the intersection was clear enough of people that the van could have moved, but the van didn't move. And what does that tell you? That tells you, I don't know what that tells you. That tells you that van may be involved in the scheme. That van may be placed there deliberately by somebody. We don't know who, but it's there for 5 minutes for reasons that we don't know. We don't know why it's there, but somebody might have put it there in preparation for this accident scene. And obviously that person who put it there couldn't be James Alex Fields, if indeed Fields was driving that Challenger. Somebody else had to be involved. And we know that Ford Fisher filmed this van on his live stream. So again, just like with the Challenger, anybody watching Ford Fisher's live stream at that time would have known, okay, the maroon van is at the intersection. The maroon van is sitting there, parked on a street where it could conceivably drive off, but it's not driving off for whatever reason. Anybody watching that live stream would know. The Dodge Challenger is driving east on Water. The maroon van is sitting at the intersection. It's important. Ford Fisher gets a good shot of both cars, and it's important also to note there are cars that are passing him in either direction as he's filming this. He doesn't really get a good shot of any other car. He gets a good shot of the Challenger. He gets a good shot of the maroon van. He doesn't get a good shot of any other car, really, in his live stream. Why? Is that just a coincidence that he just happens to get a good camera shot of both of the cars involved in the incident? Or is it something more than a coincidence? Does he know those cars are involved beforehand? Anyway, Ford Fisher continues on. He's continuing on east. He passes the scene of the accident, which the accident hasn't happened yet. He goes 1 block east beyond 4th Street to 5th Street. And then he turns north. He turns north on 5th Street. He pauses briefly at a set of barricades as if he's been told to go north to Main Street, but there's this false kind of intersection where the street ends and the pedestrian walkway begins. He pauses for about 10 seconds there. Then he continues north on 5th Street to Main Street. Now, Main Street is it was once a street open to cars, but it's now closed to cars. It's a pedestrian kind of downtown mall area in Charlottesville. Ford arrives at the corner of 5th Street and Main Street at about 4 minutes 30 seconds into his video. And he camps himself underneath this green awning that is a United Bank in Charlottesville on the corner of 5th Street and Main. And this is important. So Ford arrives there underneath this awning at 4 minutes 30 seconds into his video. Like I've told you, the accident is audible on his video at 7 minutes 30 seconds, 7 minutes 35 seconds. You can hear the accident take place. So Ford arrives at 5th Street and Main Street 3 minutes or so before the accident occurs. And he said during his live stream, he's told his viewers that the reason why he's going where he's going is he's following a group of white nationalists. He's following a group of white supremacists as they walk where they're going. And right after Ford arrives underneath this green awning, this United Bank on 5th Street in Main in Charlottesville, he turns his camera. His camera's facing north. He turns his camera to the west, and you see these white nationalists cross in front of him. And they're continuing on north on 5th Street. And the white nationalists, they're talking about white genocide, so you know who they are. And they're being filmed by a black cameraman who's following them. And these white nationalists, they don't stop with Ford. Ford stops at 5th Street in Maine. The white nationalists, they continue going north on 5th. They don't stop. They keep going north, all the way presumably to Market Street. But Ford stops. For some reason, Ford Fisher, he does not continue on with the white nationalists. He stops on Main Street. He films them as they're going north, but he stops underneath that awning. And his camera is pointed to the north, and in his camera shot, you see 5th Street going north towards Main Street. There's a parking garage to the east of 5th Street. But in his camera shot, you see two things that are of note that I think are worth noting. There's a golf cart with a stretcher on the back that is just sitting there waiting for something. It has a little light on top that is blinking. It's a golf cart with a stretcher on the back that's ready for a medical emergency on 5th and Main. And you see a government vehicle of some nature. It's a big, black, very sturdy-looking government vehicle parked right beyond the black barricades on 5th Street, right next to that parking garage. And I'll show you an image with these two vehicles circled. These are two government vehicles. It's not clear, you know. I'm assuming that the medical cart is probably the city of Charlottesville. I don't know who that big van SUV type vehicle belongs to, but they're there, and the white nationalists walk right past those two vehicles as they go north on 5th Street. Those two vehicles are in the shot. So again, Ford, these white nationalists that he says he's following, they keep going north. Ford doesn't follow. He stops at Main Street. He arrives at 5th Street in Maine at 4.5 minutes into his video. He films the white nationalists as they go north. And then at about 5 minutes, 20 seconds, 5 minutes, 25 seconds into his video, Ford tells his viewers that he's thirsty, that he needs to take a break, that he needs to get a drink of water. He goes to the east a little bit, half a block or so. He puts his camera down, and there's a water fountain right there. He goes and gets a drink of water. But he's really not left the awning at all. The awning is mere steps away. He gets his drink of water between 5 minutes, 20 seconds, 5 minutes, 25 seconds, and about 6 minutes, 25 seconds into his video, about another minute. Then he picks his camera up. He walks back to the awning at the corner of 5th Street and Main Street. And you see that waiting with him under that awning, under that United Bank awning, are several other reporters. Presumably, I'm presuming they're reporters because they have cameras and they're wearing helmets. They don't look like they're just, you know, students passing the day underneath a United Bank awning. They don't look like they're just locals. These are reporters that are there to film the chaos. But for some reason, these reporters that are there to film the events of the day, they're not there on 4th Street and Water. They're not filming the protest of Antifa. They're not filming the Black Lives Matter people chanting Black Lives Matter, chanting no Trump, no KKK. They're not filming. There's a big mass of people, and there's other live streams you can go to. There's a Faith Goldie was in the big mass of people, for instance. And you can see her live stream. There's a big, by this point, after Ford Fisher gets his drink of water, we're just 1 minute before the accident. And you can cut back to Faith Goldie's live stream because she started live streaming about 2 minutes or so before the accident. And you can see by that point, the corner of 4th Street and Water, it's filled with people.
There's a full-on demonstration now going on in the streets. Hundreds and hundreds of Antifa, weird BLM, idiots dressed like clowns, and they're just taking to the street. This is okay, so long as you're not the alt-right. The alt-right wasn't allowed to demonstrate any show of force. The alt-right wasn't allowed to legally exercise their permit.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Chant BLM, and all of a sudden the cops don't care. Where's the riot police now?
Black Lives Matter!
I'll try to give you a little bit more of a picture here. Hold on. Shoot, 1 second. Yeah. Imagine, there's no permit for this, guys. They're declaring this a victory because cops in riot gear around the alt-right. But these guys are allowed to march. No problem. Black Lives Matter is allowed to march, alt-right is not.
Our streets! Our streets! Our streets!
They are your streets. They are your streets. Because there's freedom of assembly for one group and not for another. There's freedom of protest for one group but not another. You don't need a permit if you're Antifa, but if you have a permit and you're in the alt-right, you're not allowed to mingle. You're not allowed to talk about ideas. Chant some George Soros slogans and you're good to go. You can assemble anytime you want. These are your streets.
There's people everywhere. So Ford Fisher passes it 5 minutes before the accident. There's nobody there. But then 2 minutes before the accident, there's a whole mass of people there. And this mass of people are in part the people that Ford Fisher filmed as he pointed his camera up First Street right at the beginning of his live stream. He got a good shot of those protesters right when he started. But Ford Fisher and the people that are waiting with him underneath that awning, that United Bank awning, they aren't at the scene of the chaos, the scene of the protest at 4th Street and Water, and they're also not following the white nationalists anymore. Because as I said, the white nationalists are gone by now. They've continued north on 5th Street. They're now on Market Street. They're now elsewhere. They've continued north on 5th. They're gone. So what you have here is you have Ford Fisher and 3, maybe 4 other reporters, in quotes, waiting underneath a United Bank awning on 5th Street and Main, where nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. There's no white nationalists, there's no neo-Nazis, and there's also no protesters there. The protesters are down at 4th Street and Water, doing all the stuff that you see on Faith Goldie's live stream, shouting at people and chanting, and they're going to start marching north on 4th pretty soon. The white nationalists have already gone north on 5th, and they've already gone out of sight. So for some reason that is unexplained, Ford Fisher and these 3 or 4 other journalists are camped out right around the corner, right catty corner to where the accident took place, waiting. And if you count up all the minutes, Ford arrives there at that awning at 4 minutes 30 seconds into his video. You can hear the accident take place at around 7 minutes 35 seconds. So he's there for 3 minutes. And he gets his drink of water, but he's there more or less for 3 minutes waiting for something. And that medical golf cart is waiting, and those other reporters who are there are waiting. What are they waiting for? The nationalists are gone. The protest is to their southwest. It's 1 block south, 1 block west on 4th Street and Water. They're going to start marching up 4th Street soon. Why don't these reporters go over to 4th Street to film the protest if the white nationalists are gone? Why don't they go find the white nationalists again to film them? What are they waiting for? What are these reporters waiting for underneath that United Bank awning for 3 minutes? That's the question that I have for Ford Fisher. But they wait. They wait for 3 minutes. Then you hear the accident take place. You see there's a young man who passes in front of Ford. Ford, along with the other reporters who are waiting underneath that awning, they all start running west on Main Street. At about 7 minutes, 55 seconds, you can barely see it, but you can see the Dodge Challenger reversing up 4th Street after the accident. So the car, if you recall, it hit all the people, and then it backed up on 4th Street. It backed up all the way onto Market where it escaped. You can see the car, barely, but it's there. You can see it backing up at about 7 minutes, 55 seconds into Ford's video. And then Ford arrives at 4th Street. At about 8 minutes into his video, he talks to some woman, asks her what happened. And then he arrives at the scene of the accident at about 8 minutes 15 seconds into his video, which is about 40 seconds after the accident took place. Ford arrives at the scene of the accident. And you can watch the rest of his live stream if you want. He films a lot of the aftermath. He films the medical emergency. He films everybody rushing around after the accident. But as of about 8 minutes 15 seconds into his video, the rest of it isn't that interesting to me because it's just the scene of the aftermath. What I think is interesting about his live stream is those first 8 minutes. Those first 8 minutes are very, very interesting. Just to summarize everything that we can take from this Ford Fisher video. It's a live stream. Remember, it's a live stream, so anybody who's watching his live stream would be able to see what he is filming as he is filming it. So at about 10 or 15 seconds into his video, he films the protesters coming south on 1st Street. So anybody watching his live stream would be able to know, okay, the protesters are now making their way back to Water Street. Then at about 45 seconds into his video, you see the Dodge Challenger going east on Water Street. So anybody watching his video, and he turns his camera so you can get a clear shot of the car. Anybody watching his video would know, okay, the Dodge Challenger is now making its way east on Water Street. They know where that car is at that moment, and that is about 7 minutes before the accident. They know where the Dodge Challenger is based on Ford Fisher's live stream. Ford keeps going east. Then at about 2 minutes, 45 seconds, he sees the maroon van, and he gets a good shot of it too. He turns his camera, and he gets a good shot of the maroon van. There's nobody in the driver's seat of the maroon van. There's nobody in the passenger seat. But you can see the maroon van is there where it was when the accident took place, and it's there 5 minutes early. And you can also see in Ford Fisher's live stream, the intersection is clear. The van could have gone forward. It could have gone south the way it was pointing. It could have turned left if it wanted to. The van could have driven away. It didn't. For some reason, that remains a mystery. But Ford Fisher's video shows that the van could have gone somewhere, but that the van didn't, and that it was there for 5 minutes before the accident. That raises an obvious question. And again, anybody watching Ford Fisher's live stream would be able to see where that van was as of 5 minutes before the accident. Ford Fisher keeps going east on Water Street, then he turns north on 5th Street, just a mere block away from the accident site. And he arrives at that green awning at about 4.5 minutes into his video, a full 3 minutes before the accident. And then he kind of just waits there. Ford Fisher kind of just waits there at this awning where nothing's happening. The neo-Nazis keep going north. He films them as they go north. He doesn't follow. He's been following them, or he's claimed that he's been following them this whole time, but he doesn't follow them as they go north. He lets them leave. And Ford Fisher waits there for 3 minutes underneath that awning. And not only Ford Fisher. There are 3 or 4 other journalists there who are waiting. And they're waiting for something, because you have to remember, these people, they're reporters. Or they're reporters in quotes, but they're trying to get footage. They're trying to get footage of what's going on in Charlottesville. That's how they make their living. So these aren't just people waiting underneath an awning. These are reporters at the site of a big news event, waiting underneath an awning where nothing is happening and making no overt effort to go anywhere. They're not trying to go to where the protest is, 1 block to the west and 1 block to the south. They're not making their way towards the protest. They're not trying to follow the neo-Nazis as they go north. They are waiting at a place where nothing is happening, where nobody is, for some reason. And it's not just because he's tired, because there's other people that are doing the same thing as him. If it was just Ford there by himself, then you could say, well, maybe he just wanted to get a drink and wanted to rest. But there's 3 or 4 other people whose identities are unknown at this point. But you can see them in Ford's video. They're waiting there with him underneath that awning. Why are they waiting there? And then in Ford's shot, you see that medical golf cart. You see that government vehicle. There's a government presence there right around that parking garage. That's right south of Market Street, right off of 5th Street. And if you recall, as I said in my last video, at the scene of the accident on 4th Street and Water, there were no police there. There was no government presence there at the scene of the accident when the accident took place. There's no cops. There's nobody at all. But just a couple blocks to the north, where Ford Fisher was, there was a government presence. There was that police vehicle. There was that golf cart. And in fact, just about a block away from that parking garage is the Charlottesville Police headquarters. And if you recall that video that shows the car after the accident going east on Market Street with the bumper hanging off, I'll show it to you again here. In that video, there's multiple state police officers and other police that you can see. And that video is filmed from the parking garage that is the same parking garage that Ford Fisher catches from the south, where that medical golf cart is and where the government vehicle is. So there's a big police presence in that parking garage, but there's no police presence at the site of the accident, and it's only about 2 or 3 blocks away. It's very, very close. So these are the questions, I think. And there's a lot of questions. Why was Ford Fisher catching all of this? I mean, was it all a coincidence that he caught the protesters and the 2 cars involved in the incident on his live stream and he got good shots of each? Or was that deliberate? Did he just happen to get all of these things accidentally? Did he happen to get these 2 cars accidentally? Or was he deliberately framing his pictures of these cars so that people could see them as he was passing them? Was he signaling to people who were watching his live stream where these cars were, that these cars were ready to go? That's question 1. I mean, it could just be a coincidence, maybe. Maybe he's lucky, because if this is all innocent, then he would have no reason to think that those cars meant anything. You know, those cars would be meaningless. They'd just be other cars on the road. But he gets good shots of both of those cars. Why? That's question 1. Question 2 for Ford Fisher, why is he waiting? Why is he waiting for 3 minutes underneath that awning where nothing's happening? Why isn't he out there reporting? Why isn't he out there trying to get good shots of the protest? Why isn't he following the neo-Nazis? If he doesn't want to follow the protesters, why doesn't he follow the neo-Nazis? You have to do one or the other. If you're a reporter, you want to do one or the other. Follow the Nazis, follow the protest. But what Ford Fisher did is he waited for 3 minutes underneath the United Bank awning where nothing was happening. And conveniently enough, after the accident takes place, he gets his good shot where he's running towards the scene of the chaos, and you see all these people coming towards him screaming. That's a great shot for a reporter, to see people coming around the corner screaming. The way it worked out for Ford Fisher, it worked out pretty well. He stayed away from the accident site, so he wasn't in any physical danger himself. And if a car could have blown up, and it could have been worse than it was. Ford Fisher was safe a block and a half away or 2 blocks away. He was safe from the accident, but he also gets that great shot where he's running down Main Street, where you see all these people running at him screaming. That's a great shot for a reporter. It's almost better than the shot of all the violence, because a lot of the main broadcasts can't use the shots of the violence, the shots of the actual accident. It's too violent for a lot of these broadcasts. But you can see the people coming around the corner screaming. NBC and other networks can use that on their evening news. So it worked out great for Ford Fisher, but was it just a coincidence that he got that great shot, or was he tipped off beforehand that, you should maybe wait around the corner and then you get this great shot of people running away? Those are the questions I have for Ford Fisher. And then beyond that, beyond Ford Fisher, the maroon van is a question mark. And you have to understand that, if that van was just, a car driving down the road that had to stop because of the crowd, that'd be one thing. But Ford Fisher's video proves that that's not the case. Ford Fisher's video proves that van is in position at 4th and Water 5 minutes before the accident. It could have gone somewhere. The intersection was more or less clear. It didn't. It waited where it was for 5 minutes with nobody in the driver's seat. Why? Why is that van waiting there for 5 minutes and not going anywhere? These are obvious questions to ask, and in my mind, this video, these questions may not be answerable if you believe the official story. If you believe it, taking all of this in context, and also the fact that Ford Fisher, the same guy who's catching these 2 cars on film, the same guy who's waiting underneath an awning where nothing's happening, that same guy is the same guy that's been embedded with these white nationalists for months, filming them, doing interviews with them, doing interviews with Richard Spencer and with Chris Cantwell. The same guy who's been basically allowing these white nationalists, these provocateurs who are working for the deep state, to get their message out. The same reporter, in quotes, who's allowing these people to get their message out, he's the same guy who is acting in these weird ways, who's waiting for 3 minutes where nothing's happening, and who's getting these 2 particular cars on tape in the minutes before the accident on his live stream. This is very suspicious to me, and I think we should give Ford Fisher some serious attention. We should find out who he's really working for. We should find out what his relationship with these white nationalists is, if any money has exchanged hands, and we should be asking why he got these two cars on his film, why he was waiting underneath that awning, and whether he knew about this incident before it happened is the main thing. Because, you know, if he knows about it before it happened, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's involved, but it means that what we're being told happened is not what happened. We're being told that this James Alex Fields guy is a lone nut who just decided to kill a bunch of people on his own. If Ford Fischer knows before the event happens that something's going to happen on 4th Street and Water, and he's hiding around the corner from it, waiting for it to happen before it happens, and he knows that there are two cars involved, and he gets both in his little shot on his live stream before it happens, that means that what we're being told happened is a lie. It doesn't prove to us what actually did happen. It doesn't tell us what did happen, but it tells us that what we're being told happened is a lie. And it tells us that people like Ford Fischer and perhaps those other people that are waiting with him underneath that awning, they knew something was going to happen and they were waiting for it. They were waiting around the corner, right, you know, just a few steps away from the scene of the accident for the accident to occur, so they could get there afterwards. And that's just hugely significant. It's huge. So I will follow up on this in some future videos. I think this is important enough for more than one video. But I just wanted to introduce his some of his tape to you. And I would encourage any of you that are following this to do your own research on this. You know, research Ford Fischer's background, watch his tape yourself. The link is in the description box below. You can watch it yourself. I'll include some clips here in my video, but I would encourage you to watch the full thing yourself. And you know, there may be live streams out there that I haven't seen. You know, I've been searching the internet and trying to find all of the videotape that I can, and trying to put it all together. You know, kind of understand when it was taken and where it was taken. But you know, there may be tape out there that I haven't seen. So if there's tape that you think is interesting or significant that I haven't mentioned in my video here, maybe send me a link or tell me about it or something, because maybe there's something important that I've missed. But I think Ford Fischer's video to me is very, very interesting and significant, and it hasn't gotten much attention yet, but I hope that this video brings it some attention. And hopefully all of you watching this understand the importance of the points that I'm making here, the importance of this information in his video. We know when he's filming it based on when the accident was, and he didn't edit anything out, so we know exactly when he's filming what he's filming. And we can deduce from that the situation on the ground at certain times. We can basically conclude at this point, based on his video, that the intersection was clear 5 minutes before the incident. Based on Faith Goldie's video, the intersection was filled with people at about 2 minutes, so it fills up in about that 3-minute period. But the van is there before. The van is there waiting at least 5 minutes before. And the car is driving east on Water 7 minutes before, and it's making its way up, I guess, to 4th Street from the north. And maybe there's other video out there that we can kind of nail down and kind of nail down more of this timeline here. I will make some follow-up videos on this, but I hope this gives some of you a head start, and spread this video around if you can. Just, you know, tell people the importance of this video, of Ford Fischer's tape. We need to get this out there. We need people looking at his videotape and asking these questions to figure out what exactly he knew, and to explain why he behaved in the way he did on August the 12th. Because his behavior does not appear to be innocent. It appears like he knew something was going on, and he positioned himself at a very prime location to react to what eventually happened. If he didn't know what was going on, his behavior is very hard to explain. It's very hard to explain a reporter waiting where nothing's happening for 3 minutes for no explainable reason, and, you know, passing up the ability to film this protest, passing up the ability to follow these white nationalists. I can't imagine why he would do that unless he knew before the accident that something was going to happen there. Then it makes sense. Anyway, I will end it here. Thank you for watching. Appreciate the viewership. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please send this to people who are interested in this Charlottesville event. Please get the word out about this Ford Fisher video. As always, thank you for your support. Have a great day.